Well, hello and thank you for joining me for the Alex on Tech and iTWireTV interview. I'm joined today by Bruno Aziza. He's Google's head of data and analytics. Welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me, Alex.
Thank you for taking the time. Now, Bruno, it's nearly 2023. So how has data changed significantly over the past decade or two? What is normal today that was once just science fiction?
I've been in the space for about 25 years, and the industry has changed quite a bit. When I started, I won't say it, nobody cared about data as much. It was a back office type of set of actions, and then it's kind of tax that you needed to take. I think now organizations are seeing it as, the engine for innovation in the organization. The relationship with their customers is changing. It's multi-channel. It's the digitalization of their relationship with their customers. If you're a retailer, if you're a financial services an organization, you have the opportunity now to know a lot more about your customers and create those compelling customer experiences. And so I think what we're seeing is, first of all, executives pay attention to it. Second, it is an engine of growth for organizations, as opposed as 25 years ago when it was one of those things you needed to do. And then I think third is probably the expectations of consumers in general, where they expect a better relationship with the organizations that they interface with. They expect them to understand what they need. They expect customization at very large scale. And so all of that, I think, is creating a great environment for the space. I'm really happy to be in this space because I really think in the next 20 to 30 years, it's going to be the technology that technology executives need to focus on if they want to bring value to their organization.
Look, I certainly know the value of when I first installed the Google desktop search. It would have been, probably nearly 20 years ago. And suddenly all that information on our computers was searchable. I mean, that was the revolution that sparked, of course, Google itself with the search engine having the ability to fine-tune all that data, but the granularity of the data that we can collect that was always there, but we didn't have the technology to collect, has just become second nature. And you're working right at the pointy end with the biggest of data sets, and obviously it's a very exciting time for the world, but for you too. I mean, as you said, 25 years, you must be overjoyed at how far we've come, and yet how far we still have to go. I always like to talk about this as the black and white era of computer technology. I mean, sci-fi writers have done incredible things. So, how has our ability to interpret, transform, augment, analyze, and act upon this data in real time, but also different timescales? Some data doesn't have to be acted upon in real time. How has that improved over the last few years based on everything you've done and all the companies you've worked for in this space?
I've been very lucky to work with some of the largest innovators in the space. Over the last 25, 30 years, I've worked with all types of organizations. So really small organizations that I helped launch in the data analytics space, like Alpine Data Labs and SciSense and AtScale. Also had the opportunity to work with organizations like Business Objects, that really grew and went IPO very quickly and really kind of help organizations with reporting and analytics. And then most recently joining Google, I also worked at Microsoft for 7 years. And I think, what's really happening in the industry is there's a kind of convergence of a few big trends that people need to pay attention to. The first one is this idea that you need to have systems that allow you to have limitless access to just about any data. And you talked a little bit about it here, real-time data, but also data of all types. Structured, unstructured, semi-structured. You really need to move away from this idea of having silos of multiple data marts for a function. I think customers expect now that if the data exists, they should be able to query it and not have to worry about capacity or setting up environments like we used to in the on-prem world. The second area that is a big focus for customers is this idea of governance, and I call that governance with a big G, because often, to be able to output great value out of data, you also have to be able to trust that data. And so the idea of having high data quality, having high data completeness and freshness, and the ability to kind of trace the lineage of the data from its creation, if you will, all the way to its activation is a really important capability. And often, it's a second thought for organizations that are building this muscle. And so we're seeing organizations accelerate their migration to a really data-driven organization by starting with governance rather than just starting with data. And then finally, it's about activation, right? I mean, the world that we live in here, we're not here to just create the dashboards. We're here to provide insights, just like you said, in the most simple, the most personalized way, the most accessible way, so people can really take action on our data. And I think the best example of any data product that I know of is Google.com. Every organization out there wants to be able to build products just like we built data at Google.com. And so I think that's where we are fairly unique, because we relate to the issue that the enterprise CIO has today. How do I take this massive amount of data, complex, fast growing, often disconnected, into a simple interface where my people can just get the service that they want so they can move on to the task they're trying to accomplish.
Well, you just mentioned CIOs. So, iTWire is a business-oriented publication, although we do love all the consumer gadgets too. But what are the challenges, in more detail, that CIOs face today when making sense of all this data? I mean, for years people have spoken about data overload, but that was just on a personal level. But for organizations, I mean, data's coming from everywhere. The storage requirements going ballistic. Google itself, you must have, the biggest storage on the planet, or at least competing for it with Amazon's and all the rest. But, there's a lot of players out there. What do you say sets Google apart, and what are those challenges that CIOs face?
I'd say probably the biggest challenge that organizations have today is that the approach of the past just doesn't match the opportunity they have in the future. Most organizations have had to witness, on-prem constructs. And what I mean by that is this idea of having to think about the capacity you need to load, and having to think about the compute you need to provision, and so forth. And a lot of the cloud vendors today kind of take this concept of on-prem thinking and make it available in the cloud. I think our value proposition is really around, we're the most modern, most complete data analytics platform that you can think of, because we built it for the future. And right, so in our world, we think about simplicity. We think about, you think about a product like BigQuery, for instance. People think about it as a cloud data warehouse. It's way more than that. Think about an analytics system that you can throw any data at, structured, unstructured, semi-structured, and it just works. And so I think that's where we're uniquely positioned, because we have been where these customers are today. We've had to build these products that have to scale for billions of people, that have to scale for unpredictable workloads. And so that's a really unique position. We can truly relate with the issue that customers have. And for having been here now over 2 years, it's really quite amazing the type of innovation that we see customers take by thinking about the future way differently. You don't have to think about VMs. You don't have to think about shrinking the data. You don't have to think about the world of the specialists. You have to think about, look, I've got data. I need to put my hands on as much data as I can. I need to be able to trust it at very large scale. And I need to give access to people, in a way that they can consume it in a very personal manner. And, when I think about BI, for instance, often people think about the BI workloads as hundreds and thousands of people. We think about millions of people. And so that's really kind of the differentiation is, today, the sad truth in the data analytics world is that 30% or so of data analytics solutions are adopted by employees. So you're kind of missing 70% of the organization, and you're missing that engagement that is critical to making you a valuable organization. And we're really focused on closing that gap.
Yeah, well, I'm just, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of a couple of sayings which I'm probably mangling, but one of them was that, yesterday's solutions are not going to fix tomorrow's problems. And the thinking that got us here is not necessarily the thinking that's going to get us there. I mean, sure, there's the fundamentals will always stay in place, but you've got to expand your mind and expand what you think is possible. And often solutions are turning things on their head. Galileo thought that the Earth revolved around the sun, and he was right. It turned orthodoxy on its head. But look, we've just had this multi-year pandemic, and while we did have great technological acceleration, sporadic lockdowns still happen in China today. We hear about it, affecting tech manufacturing and logistics. So what have been the biggest shifts in the big data landscape since the pandemic, and what learnings can we take away from that to inform business strategy in 2023 and beyond?
I think the first change is it has accelerated the level of awareness for all organizations that data is really the way for them to innovate. And I think about 68% of organizations can't get value out of their data today. And so while most of the industry was aware of it, what we found is that this crisis really accelerated the need of, okay, if I want to maintain a relationship with my customers, I can't do it through a physical location anymore, right? So if you're retail, financial services, any of those industries, it really just puts this complexity right in front of you. And it also has changed, I think, how IT leaders think about their role inside an organization. Previously, they might have thought about, their role as technology as a cost center, and now they're really seeing themselves as, now I'm creating solutions that are going to accelerate the transformation of my organization. So, the biggest switch that we see is how CIOs organize their teams so they can provide data products to their business counterparts, and it could be internal stakeholders, it could be external stakeholders. And so we're really seeing this trend of people moving from building a data ocean for their data, access to any data, internal, external, any type of data, in real time, to data mesh, which is the ability to organize yourself and provide innovation at the edge, if you will, for your organization, all the way to building data products or business purpose solutions, so people can activate the data and then make decisions faster. And so in a way, it's accelerated this transformation for us. I mean, we have the opportunity to work with some of the most innovative organizations in the world. So, we've learned a lot from what they're doing. And so it's both a technology change, but also a mindset change. And I think it's great news. If you're a CIO or a chief data officer today, you're playing a very, very important role to help your organization, get to the next phase of its evolution.
And I've come across a couple of companies that will say that that turn everything on their head by saying that they don't want data lakes or data oceans, but I've heard the term data lakes, where they copy everything into the data lake and they've got to copy it back and things get lost. And what they're able to do is find data wherever it is, and it can be anywhere, and then they can structure that and put it into a much more easily accessible business tool. So is that an approach that you are also taking?
I think, what's interesting about the term, the data lake, is, and we hear this from customers, right? The terms that I use, data ocean and mesh and data product, are not Google terms. They're terms that our customers use to describe their environment. And I'll go back to what the CIO of Vodafone told me. He said, the data lake is comfortable. And the data lake is comfortable because it's landlocked. You see the end of the data. But typically, it's not very representative of the actual picture of your data. We design, for instance, our products to be multi-cloud by default. So we assume that the data you're going to need to use is going to be, of course, in the GCP cloud, but it's also going to be in the Azure cloud and the Amazon cloud. And so we want to provide the most open data cloud, so you as an executive, you can reach to where the data is, so you can make the right decision. So we have this great product called BigQuery Omni that allows us to send the processing where the data is out. Very differentiated to competitors who might want you to move the data to their cloud or might want to replicate the same environment across multiple clouds. And so trying to make that as simple as possible is really important for us. This idea of simplicity in a very complex world is what I think we're pretty good at. Also the fact that we have very good capabilities around artificial intelligence, which is a great way for organizations to take their data and turn them into something differentiated. Think about fraud analytics, anomaly detection, propensity to buy. Those are great outputs and outcomes that organizations are trying to look for when they partner with us. And so any industry is now looking to see all the data, trust all the data, and activate the data in as real time as they can. And that's what's going to make them different from their competition. And so many of the leaders come to partner with us to co-innovate in that space.
So with all of the experiences that you've had across multiple companies, as you described before, and with all that you do now, what do businesses need to consider when building their modern data stack in 2023? Even though that we know, of course, you'd prefer to use businesses to use Google, but whether they're using Google solutions or not?
I think there's a few key constructs, right? I think the first one, and we talked a little bit about it, this idea of mindset, right? So you do not want to dumb down your data stack for answering the complex questions your people have. So you want to have a sophisticated stack to answer the complex questions. But it doesn't mean that you have to, dumb down the environment and simplify it down. So you really want to partner with an organization that has really great depth in the ability to handle data at scale and the ability to use artificial intelligence to kind of power this data. And that's probably the first one, because we see a lot of customers saying, well, maybe I'm just going to start with something really simple. And then quickly what they realize is they're limiting the potential of their employees, right? And so you want to be able to create this environment that's flexible, that's limitless, so you can engage any data, any workload, and any people really across your organizations. I think that's a really important construct. The second one is how you organize your team and what is the percentage of people that work in data inside your organization. So if you take the organization like Wayfair, for instance, in the US, 18% of Wayfair employees are data people. And so that says a lot about the culture of the organization, where they think about data as a central component of the growth of their organization. So that's really the second concept. And then I think probably the third one is to realize that the majority of the data that you need is actually outside your walls. And so being able to tap into solutions like what we have with Analytics Hub, or solutions around Spark that allow you to take advantage of the innovation in the ecosystem is a really important one, because you don't want to just live in your own bubble. What's happening in the data world today is that it's the result of a large ecosystem. So for us, when it comes to cataloging solutions, for instance, we have great partners like Calibra. When it comes to business intelligence, we have great partners like Tableau, right? So we want to embrace the ecosystem so everybody can grow inside the organization. It's an industry that is 25, 30 years old. And so you're not getting to build a data stack from scratch. You're building it in conjunction to the investments you've made in the past. So it's important to embrace what's in existence in the market.
Now, one question that's been running in my head whilst I've been listening to you explaining all the answers to all the different questions. You talked about how 70% of the people in companies are still not with the program, not using it. And one of the things I love to do is show people all the cool advanced features of their smartphone, even simple stuff that they don't know. I mean, it's incredible how many people don't use just simply voice dictation. Now it's offline on devices. It doesn't even have to go into the cloud anymore to get that response. So what are you doing to help in companies to encourage that other 70% of users, the bulk of their users, to get on board with the new program?
Well, there are a few areas where you really could take advantage of the Google Data Analytics platform to really kind of scale to the next level. The first one is this idea of convergence of workloads. So, today the world thinks about doing analytics primarily using SQL, but what we're working on is, and we've announced that next, is this ability to bring in new workloads within BigQuery. So a great example is Spark, for instance. So the ability to run Spark workloads right from within BigQuery is a big differentiator, because setting up a Spark environment today can be intense. You have to set up new infrastructure, you got to move data and so forth, and you got to tap into a different skill set. We're doing the same thing for machine learning. So BigQuery machine learning is SQL we've created to tap into machine learning models, very adopted by our customers, and really kind of enabling any business analyst to start building models, right? I mean, the game here is that if you could reduce the cost of experimentation, you can now get a lot of innovation across your employee base. And so that's probably the first area, is being able to work with data, any data, from just SQL or using Spark or using machine learning. Also, the data types that we support have increased, right? You think about analytics typically with the structured data sets, but we just announced support for unstructured data sets. So now you can run machine learning on images. So you can imagine doing prediction on just images, which we think is really a game changer for a lot of organizations. So that's on the how I work with data. And how I activate the data, you might not know this, but today we have over 10 million monthly active users on our product called Looker Studio, which is our business intelligence self-service solution. And so we're really trying to make sure that these capabilities are effectively available to as many people as we can, because the idea here is that for us to be a partner of your innovation, we have to enable as many people as we can on as much data as available and on as many workloads as they're comfortable with. And so I think it's a combination of those three things, right? Limitless data, limitless workload, limitless reach, that's going to enable organizations to kind of break through some of the limitations they've had in the past. If you look back in history, we've been pretty restrictive in data access and data activation. Typically, you rely on a small team of data scientists or small team of business analysts. We want to make that relationship with data a lot more liquid, so you can innovate at a much faster pace.
But do you also run like customer workshops where you take them through all these capabilities and show them and say, right, you need to get your staff to be using all these cool tools that we have? It's so easy. Do you actively work with companies to show them so that there's no excuse?
Absolutely. So there's two ways that customers kind of interact with us. The first one is what you might call product-led growth, where they're discovering the product and they've got access to the product. In fact, recently at Next, we announced the availability of connected sheets, which is essentially think about the future of spreadsheets connected. It's a web experience. It's connected to BigQuery in live mode. Billions of data can be accessed by financial analysts. That functionality is available now in Workspace. It used to be available in only Workspace Enterprise. So we're making it very easy for people to get access to our tooling. So if you have a personal Gmail account today, you should try connected sheets, and you can try it on BigQuery Sandbox, which is you don't need a credit card, and you can just now load your data and do massive queries that you couldn't do before. So I think that's probably the first level of engagement. You're really massive globally. People are really working with the product, and we let the product can talk for itself. We don't need to do a lot of marketing for that, because people know about our innovation potential.
Marketing.
And then of course, I mean, that's the best type of marketing, right? It's just the product should talk for itself. And then of course we have a strong enterprise engagement where we really try to think about co-innovation with customers. You look at some of the the large organizations that we work with, we're really trying to get them to the next level. What is the product that you're trying to build? What is what you couldn't do before that our approach, our DNA, our engineering mindset can help you really break through problems that you couldn't do before. So really about, I want to say the art of possible, but it's probably the science of what's possible, if I
Yeah,
could say it that way.
sure.
Because that there's a huge potential, especially when you change your mindset of starting to think about anything's possible. You think about what we just announced. Analytics Hub is a fantastic data sharing platform. You and I to collaborate on building data analytics products that we can put available on an exchange in a highly secured manner, and we can secure it so we can turn it on, turn it off. We're really bringing to market capabilities that just have not been available previously in that way. And so, I'm excited about the next, 5 and 10 years, because I think we'll see a lot of great innovation for customers. These customers have been waiting for someone that understands the potential that they have, and they have a lot of great ideas that just have been constrained by the old thinking
Yeah.
of legacy approaches, not just legacy technology, but also legacy thinking, I think, of what can be done with data.
I think a lot of times when things are turned on its head, it's like we go from a mentality of lack and things in short supply to a mentality of abundance. Think of cell phone plans. They used to be by the minute. Now it's unlimited. Same with data. It used to be limited, and of course with mobiles they have the artificial cap and they slow you down. But nevertheless, it's like even in Star Trek. I mean, they're in a post-scarcity economy, and we've got replicators to create things. You can make whatever you want. There's just we have to have that shift. We need the technological shift to you can wish for it, but you need the technology to make it happen. But we've never been more sophisticated and mature in that area. Now, you mentioned a couple of things from Google Next, which you held last month. Is there anything else you want to mention that was launched at Google Next? And also, I can see right in front of you, or behind you, it says Google Cloud Next Leaders Connect Sydney. So tell us a bit about that event as well. But is there anything else you wanted to mention about Next last month?
Absolutely. So we announced lots and lots of products. Of course, what's been interesting since I joined is that originally we announced most of our products at Google Next, but over the last 2 years, we've created multiple moments for the community to engage with us. So we created the Data Cloud Summit. We created the Data Engineering Summit, and now we're doing Next, not just the global Next, but we're doing local events. And the whole idea there is to one, communicate clearly the context around these launches, but also you connect with the community so we can get their feedback. What's important to us is that we're building these products and these solutions for you, and so we want to hear globally as much as we can, so we can kind of turn around and then provide great capabilities for you. And a great example is Big Lake, which is a product, a lake house product, if you will, that brings kind of workloads together, so data warehousing and lake workloads together. We announced in preview about 3 months ago, and we got such a great response for the market and great feedback that we're able to turn that from preview into GA in just 3 months. So this idea of communicating and getting the feedback directly from customers on a very large scale also allows us to focus on what's important to them, so we can deliver as much innovation as fast as possible. The other areas around Dataplex, which often it's an area of governance that people don't talk about a lot, but it's really critical to make sure that the data that you have is data that your people can trust. And so we announced a lot of functionality there around data quality, around lineage, around bringing catalog under the umbrella of Dataplex. So I'm really excited about that one. And then finally, business intelligence, is a space that I've been in for a very long time, and where we had acquired Looker about a few years ago, and now we bringing Looker and Data Studio together in a suite called Looker Studio for self-service. And then, of course, the great Looker capabilities around LookML, because we see that the way the world is evolving is these CIOs are building these data products where the interface might go from a dashboard, it might go from a call into an API, it might go from an embedded custom application they've built. So we want to be their partner along the way here, where they can get access to a gigantic amount of data that is relevant to their people, that they can trust, so they can activate in any interface that they choose. Right now, I think one of the constraints we've seen in the past in this industry is really kind of getting people stuck in small data in dashboards. And the opportunity, turns out, is in all the data across any interface, including the dashboards. And so, those are some of the key innovations I think about. There's a lot more, right? If you let me talk through all of them, I think we'll be here for another 3 hours, but
Sure.
lots
Well,
and lots of launches.
we are running out of time, and as it turns out, I'm in San Francisco, you're in Sydney, but you'll be back here, and I'll still be here. And I'd love to sort of continue this, do a part 2 of this one, because I know you have a hard stop very soon. But tell us about your Data Journeys podcast, some of the highlights, and where people can, subscribe to it.
Absolutely. So, like I said at the beginning, we do all this for customers. And so we're trying to find ways to scale, the connection between the customers. Typically the way enterprise software vendors connect customers, you have to go through them. And so when I joined, I really thought that because we have so many customers that are innovating at such an amazing scale, I couldn't, be in the way of that connection. So we created this program called Data Journey. It's every Tuesday or every other Tuesday. We publish a video that's an interview just like this. So it's not scripted.
Yeah.
It's not highly, it's not a marketing
It's a
video.
fireside
really,
chat.
It's exactly right. So imagine that I would just, I'm just curious about how you as a chief data officer or head of data analytics, how did you mature? And typically I ask them 3 questions. Tell me about your company. Tell me about your use cases, and tell me about your do's and don'ts. What did you learn? And by doing that, I'm achieving 2 things. One, frankly, I'm learning myself from these customers. I am giving a platform for my customers to make sure that they are visible in the community and people know about their work. But what's been amazing is that now other customers reach out to the folks that have been on the program. And so it keeps on giving, because now we're building this community at a very large scale. You got people like the head of data at Mercado Libre in Argentina talking to the chief data officer at WPP in England. They would have never been able to connect otherwise. And now I'm able to connect these folks, and they don't have to go through me anymore. And so, anyone that's listening to us, first, should definitely, follow this channel. But if they want to be on it, they should reach out to us, because it's a very lightweight process to get on the program. But the value and the impact that it has to the community has been really, really great for us.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Bruno Aziza, the head of data and analytics at Google Cloud, thank you very much for your time, and best of luck whilst you're in Sydney.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you. Bye-bye.